We are in a world where there is a lack of perspective in the life of many people. We are in a world where we are still going on in a conditioned, more or less unconscious way of reacting, where we are still believing that the animal way of reacting is right. That is how it has to be. That means we follow the approach of power, approach of force, we follow the approach of punishment, revengefulness, and we justify anger and hatred. So what happens through that is, as you can see in the world, it becomes more and more. It becomes a bigger entanglement. And as you can also see that when you react to somebody's unsensibility, blindness, unconsciousness in the same level, you are also feeding to the unconsciousness in yourself. Both are supporting the blindness in each other. And through that we remain in a one-dimensional level. Everybody has their justification for their kind of reaction. So it is not a question of logical thing. It's a question of seeing what is important, what is making the difference, what is valuable, what is healthy, what is intelligent. And that comes into manifestation only when you consider that when we are pushing the other into a negative reaction, because the other is negative to us or unsensible to us, we are pushing each other back into the animal level, which is a one-dimensional approach to reality. But for a human being, that is destructive. Especially when we see that we are in a world where the human beings have accumulated so much power in terms of being able, through the scientific developments, not only to use the knowledge in the healthy way, but also to misuse it on the basis of egocentric entanglements. And what I'm calling egocentric is that where we are only looking at what we feel, what we want, what is that I like and what I don't like, without considering that in a reality we are all interconnected and the other may have other factors which we need to take into consideration so that we don't just go blindly into a negative process. So this is a very important recognition, what is first of all needed. And the second thing also is to see that we need to bring it consequently into life. Because with the accumulated scientific knowledge, accumulated power on many levels, in the hand of politicians, in the hand of people who are in many powerful positions as managers or owners of companies, of media, of other kind of areas where they can influence and manipulate. It goes very easily into a destructive process, which is neither good for the individual nor for the whole. Not for the whole world. And that is what we are able to see now. For example, what we are at this moment of the situation in the world experiencing as such a polarization of people who believe that the way it appears to them is reality and feel justified to be aggressive, to be angry, to be destructive. They are not seeing the reality the way it actually is. And they justify through their interpretation of reality an aggressive, destructive process. What we see in the war process in Ukraine is something very obvious in this. People are controlled, people are prevented from coming in touch with the real facts of life, and they are manipulated in different ways. And when they come to notice that, hey, it's not really how it is said in the media there, and they start raising their voices, then they get punished very drastically. They are dragged into war processes without most of them even wanting it, because they see that the people against whom they are fighting were part of their life in different ways. And they all have many relatives, connected people, even just in the worldly, normal way of looking. And you can see that the same thing is happening in other dictatorial processes, where the power and the position is dominating. But let us become aware of this factor also. Even in the so-called democratic processes, when people are not having the understanding and the awareness to confront and question and consider things more deeply, they also get manipulated. They also get dumped with one-sided way of looking at things. And many of them who are provoked in their fear, in their unclarity, start believing that this is so. So even in America, where we imagine that there's a very great democracy, but it is very, very fragile, because the sense of democracy is only valuable when people are aware that it is a way of considering each other more deeply, more honestly, more courageously, more wakefully. But when people are not considering like that, and they are manipulated, and they are easily getting manipulated, the country is getting polarized. It can very easily fall into a civil war. So it is very, very delicate. It is not possible in individual life process or in the global life process to continue in this approach of force, of intimidation, of aggression, of revenge, of punishment. And to consider it more deeply, when you see that those who are, so to speak, in the role of the bad, in the role of aggressor, in the role of the one who is misusing the power, we need also to consider what is making them like that. What way to bridge to them, what way to help them to see the reality. Because if they also would see the reality, if they also are not just reacted to with punishment and condemnation, then they have a chance to consider. It is valuable to prevent them from being more destructive. That is very important. But it should not be combined with an unconscious entanglement on the side of the people who are wanting to respond to it, where they are themselves trapped in their anger, in their power orientation, in their fears, and in their unconscious judgments. So we are in a very, very delicate period in the world, and all the problems we have, whether it is on the level of atomic war, which can be looming any moment, or in the climate catastrophe, which is very drastically to be seen in many levels, not only in terms of the weather changes, also the melting of the polar ice and the whole implications of that in the lives of people. On one side, we can see very easily how everything is so deeply interconnected. Because we see that when certain chain of connections where the gas was being brought and sent to different countries, everything was working in a certain way, suddenly when that is cut, it affects all other things, all the other transportation, all the other companies, all the other production. And so it is also in the production of chips, in the production of the computer chips, I mean, not potato chips. I would like to bring the attention to the basics because we need to consider it courageously and honestly. Then we can see that life has created this wonderful, ungraspably intelligent life process where we are in. And it is our capacity, it is our responsibility as human beings to try to understand it more deeply. And if those of you who can understand it, who can see it, and who are already in touch with these perspectives, are not taking it to heart and bringing it into manifestation, where else can we expect people to understand and go deeper? That is why I request, I recommend, I indicate to anybody and everybody who has some capacity of understanding, some insight, some honest interest, to consider life more deeply. Rather than going blindly into reactions, wanting to punish, wanting to hurt, wanting to be destructive, and following the blind reactions which arise in us, to reconsider everything as carefully, as gracefully, as intelligently, and answer. The answer is not always so easy. You have to look always in the individual situation. You have to always consider it in the given moment. And that is where you can see only when you are looking into yourself, you are in touch with that what is taking place in you and not getting caught up in it. Not only just saying that, oh, I'm angry or I'm irritated or I'm disturbed or I'm unhappy or I'm bitter. Look also behind it. The fear, the considerations, the attitudes, the beliefs. Accept yourself, accept also the wholeness of the situation, and then allow the answer to arise in you in each situation, in each moment, where you will see that when you are considering so consciously, the sensibility of the heart also will be participating in your intelligent answer. This is how I make a differentiation. People who are looking only from one side, from a fixed way of looking, which we call the egocentric way of looking in a certain way, they are not really using the intelligence in the right way. They are being clever. They may be looking intelligent. They may be looking very much able to manage and manipulate things. But because their very basic vision of understanding life is narrow, not based on the reality, they will, in the long run, hurt themselves and each other. They will not contribute to the creative process. Intelligence begins when we are really looking, considering, and being in touch with the deeper interconnected aspect of the reality. And that is where you will see that the sensibility of your heart is coming in. Because you are giving, through this distance you create to this automatic process in you, the chance for your heart and the sensibility of your heart to participate in the moment and to bring out an answer. So everybody has this capacity. Everybody is capable. But you have to recognize that you need deep within to determine and stay behind it. Because the unconscious automatism pulls us into blind reactions. So it is another way of learning to use the mind rather than letting ourselves be caught up in the unconscious and blind conditioned way of reacting, which is happening in our day-to-day unconscious approach in life. So there's tremendous urgency for it, because we can very easily go into self-destructive and destructive processes which can bring harm, pain, suffering to oneself and to the others. And see the fact, it is very easy to be destructive. You don't need much intelligence. The person who is upset and feeling cornered, who is in power, if you are just only reacting to him, then he is in a kind of lost state, and anything is okay for him, because if I'm going to die, then let anything happen. So it becomes a very careless, unsensitive process when we are reacting to the blindness of the other in the same blind way. One has to bring awareness. And this is not only just with few persons, it is to be the quality which we bring to the world when we want that there is really a healthy development, where we are able to take care of the climate, where we are able to bring about a different way to connect with each other, where we don't need to let people starve and suffer in many parts of the world, where we don't need to be careless and destructive to anybody. But it needs careful consideration. It needs our initiative to understand. And we can only start with ourselves. Understand it very carefully. It's not enough if you are just agreeing with me, because blindly agreeing or blindly disagreeing means you are not considering it carefully enough. Consider it. Consider what is really the sense behind all that what we are considering now. And let it become your understanding, so that you are able to put it into living, put it into practice, so that you are able to bring this quality of presence in your life, which will be very deeply fulfilling to you in the long run, and which you will see is making your life more peaceful, more joyous, more harmonious. So I wanted to bring attention to this aspect because it's of great urgency.